Now that we've taken a look at the render settings, let's take a look now at something called an output module. If you look here in our render settings, we have underneath it something called an output module. I'll go ahead and twirl this open, and just like the render settings, when we twirl that open, we can see what After Effects is already setting up for us. So in my case, my format is QuickTime, and my RGB channels are selected. I have millions of colors, and my final size is 640 by 480, as an example of what I have here. If I want to change these, I click Lossless right here, and then I'm given the Output Module Settings dialog box. I can change my format by clicking on this drop-down, and I can choose AIFF, Blu-ray, MP3, MPEG-4, and some image sequences. So I can choose JPEG sequence, SGI sequence, WAV file format, and more. I can also choose to render video by checking this. I can change my channels, so I can just go to alpha, RGB plus alpha, or simply RGB. I can choose my color depth, so I can go from millions of colors to grayscale, so I can just render as 256 grays or 256 colors. This might be helpful when you want to really get a smaller file size for using it on the web, for example. I can also choose to crop, so I can crop it to the region of interest. I can also use these guys here to change my size. As you see here, it's changing up here. I'll go ahead and take that off. Now, if you render and you don't hear any audio, that might be because you didn't check this guy here. So I'll click Audio Output. Then I can choose the quality of that in kilohertz. You have very, very low quality, 8 kilohertz, all the way to CD and even studio quality. You know, the kind of studio that people go in, pay their money, and make an album. So you can really go to really high quality audio. I can also choose the bit depth for the audio, 8-bit, 16, or 32. I can choose mono or stereo. I can click here as well and choose format options. So I can choose a compression codec. What this typically means is, instead of having the audio at full size, I can try to find a compression scheme that's going to reduce the file size of that audio, but still give me good quality. Now typically I use the AAC or the IMA 4:1 compression. But you know, if you're working for a client, find out what they would like for you to save as. I'll go ahead and cancel that. I also have for my video output format options as well, which once again gives me a codec to compress the size so I can get a high quality but a smaller file size. And there are a ton in here. And of course, it would be impossible to talk about them all. But I'll let you know from experience that I've used animation. I've also used the H.264. I've used the Motion JPEG and Sorensen Video. So once again, these all depend on the client and what their specifications are. But the goal is to give you a high quality playback while squashing down the file size. So instead of a 200 megabytes file, you try to get something like, let's say, 10 or 15 megabytes, but it still looks as good as possible. So what I can do when I'm done is click OK. My changes will update. And the only thing I have to do next to actually get this onto my computer when I hit this render button is to tell it where to save the file. And that's the job of the Output To section. So I click on the name of the file. Then I can choose my desktop, for example. And then I can choose my file format again if I need to. Then I hit render. And then if I have, let's say, 5 versions of this same movie with different settings, they'll render in sequence. And I can come back, and on my desktop, I'll have all of the rendered footage from my comp ready to go. And that is how you can render out your footage from After Effects.